there was just a sense that I'd seen this somewhere before. And suddenly I remembered that one of the very first paintings that I ever had hanging in an art gallery could have very well have been set in that exact Grecian village. A few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to teach and paint a watercolor workshop in Greece. And interestingly, on one of the very first days of our trip, we stopped in this small village on the island of Amorgos to paint. And walking through the village, there was this odd sense of familiarity that I just had kind of this feeling. And as I looked around at the crisp white buildings, the colorful doors, the arch of bougainvillea over the doorways, there was just a sense that I'd seen this somewhere before. And suddenly I remembered that one of the very first paintings that I ever had hanging in an art gallery could have very well have been set in that exact Grecian village. It was a colorful door, an arch of bougainvillea, and a beautiful white building. And I actually had several paintings that I did that were probably from the same collection of reference photos. This was back before I knew about copyright. I'd probably pulled them out of a magazine and didn't realize that I shouldn't be exhibiting paintings painted from professional photographers' photographs and hanging them in art galleries. Anyhow, it was just really interesting to realize that here I was walking through these scenes that I would never in a million years have dreamed that I would be able to photograph and paint myself in person. And so it was kind of a beautiful full circle moment with a little bit of copyright shame. And it was just kind of a magical thing to realize that here I was doing something that I wouldn't have even dared to dream about a few years ago. What a privilege it was to travel, to see this beautiful country, to enjoy the amazing food, to meet a group of dedicated artists and paint with them as we experienced Greece together. Most of us for the very first time. And once upon a time, art workshops were things advertised in the back of my art magazines, things that I would never have thought I could afford to do, and certainly would have never dared to think that I would be teaching one day. And here I am, not only having finished a beautiful trip to Greece, 12 days of island hopping on Grecian islands, experiencing just the uniqueness of the landscape, the culture, and the food. I have to say it again. There are just no blues bluer than a Greek sky over Santorini. But it makes me wonder, about where I'm at right now as an artist and where you're at right now as an artist. What are the things that we're not daring to imagine or dream about? And how are we going to see echoes and reflections of our past when we move into our future?
We're the luckiest people on the planet right now.
Isn't this pretty?
I have several travel workshops planned for the upcoming year, and I want to tell you a little bit about them. If you've thought about painting and traveling with me, I want to break down the differences between the different kinds of art workshops I'm teaching and what's upcoming for me. But I also want to talk about learning and the learning cycle and what you might be looking for in terms of creating an environment for you to grow as an artist. It's not always what we think it's going to be. I'm returning to Greece next year. I'm also teaching in Costa Rica. That's a 2-week art and travel workshop, and in Italy. These beautiful locations, I think, are some of the most beautiful places on earth until I find the next beautiful place. And, that's a plus and a minus sometimes for an artist, because we do have the sense that we can't possibly hope to capture the beauty that we're seeing. And I think that's why art and travel actually pair so well together, because when we travel, when we experience these spaces, one of the most important things is to be able to celebrate and savor the place that you're in. And we're not very good at slowing down to notice, to be present, to hold and hold. I don't like the word capture. To hold and treasure these memories. And when we stop to paint, we, in essence, slow time down. We force ourselves to be more observant than we would be if we were just shooting a photo and moving to the next thing. And, actually that's one thing to point out is when I was painting in Santorini, I was doing a demonstration for my students, and we were kind of on a pathway where people were passing us to go view the next thing. And they would pass us on their way down the path, and they would pass us again on the way back because we stopped. And we were there in that space longer than most people, would have chosen. And, there's something about that. It takes intention to slow down and see those spaces. And I think there's something really valuable in that. Since I came back from teaching in Greece, I have a camera phone full of photos. I scroll for miles to get to any photos that were taken before my trip to Greece. But what I've been showing people isn't the photos I've taken, it's my sketchbook and the paintings that I created on location in Greece. These paintings come with stories, not just of what we saw, but what we did, the conversations we had, who we met and experienced, the foods we ate, and the places where we stopped. There's so much in a little book when you stop to paint, and it all makes that experience richer. Let's talk about learning for a minute. When I take an art workshop, I want to grow. I want to grow as an artist, and I want to gain from the knowledge that the instructor brings. And there's always a lot of unknown about it. For me, I take maybe a workshop a year if I'm fortunate enough to have the opportunity. And sometimes online, sometimes in person, more rarely in person. And so we entrust ourselves to an instructor. We hope that they're going to speak into where we're at so that we can gain from their knowledge and grow. And I deeply believe that what you are ready for will present itself to you. So when you come to a workshop, whatever you're ready for, there's going to be something there that you can gain. And it's not always easy to tell because a big part of growth is discomfort. Recognizing that you're going to have to push into new terrain in order to learn and grow. That means sometimes what the instructor is teaching, there's a volume of it that might fly over your head, might feel overwhelming. It means that sometimes the paintings that you're going to create in that space of learning are not going to be paintings that you want to show to anybody. You're pushing into a place of discomfort, and that comes with some failure. And maybe not the outcomes you're hoping for initially. This is a process. Making art has always been a process. And so as we open ourselves up to learn from others, we are stepping into another step in the process. With an art and travel workshop, and I try to describe my workshops in two different ways. I have studio workshops like the ones I teach for Madeline Island School of the Arts, which I have a workshop coming up in Tucson in January 2025, and another one with teaching together with Steve Putrick in the fall of 2025. Yes, in October 2025, I believe. We don't have a set date for that one yet. And in these workshops, we have studio space. We do some plein air painting, but there's a large, in that 9 to 4 classroom schedule, there's hours and hours for you to develop paintings, receive feedback from your instructors, try different things, and benefit from the knowledge of the group as well. In a studio workshop, we're there for those 6 or 7 hours. It's a long period of time. We're all exhausted by the end because painting for that stretch of time demands a lot from your brain. Most of us don't physically paint for 6 hours a day, and it is both physically and emotionally fatiguing. But I love the fact that I get to walk through a classroom and see an artist develop in the studio. Offer feedback, be present for you to ask your questions, and just have that environment where I can really devote time to my students, to your learning, to demonstrating paintings directly, answering some of your questions. Generally, I open those classes with a demonstration, then time for you to paint. Generally in the afternoon, there's a second demonstration, and then the more free time for painting and that one-on-one interaction. In an art and travel workshop, these are experiential workshops where we are sharing in a travel experience together. And in Italy and Greece and in Costa Rica in 2025, we are not just staying in one place, and we're not in the studio. These are plein air workshops. We are focused on sketching, and there's an immediacy to that and a little bit of urgency to it almost, as we travel, show up to these new beautiful spaces, and then slow down, pause to take in the environment and try to capture an impression of it in our sketchbooks. These also include demonstrations, and I always work to be very present to see what you're working on, to offer feedback, to answer your questions. But because we don't have a studio space, these are not the 6-hour marathon painting sessions that you're going to get in a studio workshop. Rather, we have a couple of hours a day dedicated to painting. We have the experience building process of just getting to know each other and exploring these new places together. And then the skills that are developed in plein air painting, I don't want to minimize those. It can sound as though maybe you're not going to get as much in a sketching plein air workshop, but plein air is something, in-person, on-location painting, which is what I mean when I say plein air, that there's skills that are developed in that you're pushed to develop in ways that you don't get in the studio. And I've really noticed this for myself. I've been spending more time painting on location in the last 3 years. And what I have seen is that when I'm painting on site, I'm forced to work quickly, which is something a lot of us don't push ourselves to do when we're devoted to a studio practice. But on location, the light is changing, the weather might turn. Sometimes there's a time limit just in how long you can stay in one spot, especially in a touristy area where a lot of people are coming through. You might feel like you don't want to take up a cafe table for more than an hour. Things like that tend to be factors. And so you're pushed to develop faster decision-making skills. Being more decisive in your painting practice is a powerful tool that you can add to your toolbox. Sharpening your observation, being able to develop a type of shorthand for rendering different common elements in your scenes also happens when you're plein air painting. For myself as a plein air painter, I really felt limited in the first few years of plein air practice just by the learning curve. There's a lot to take in. And so I tended to be quite literal to what I was seeing. And in recent months, and it's only been three-ish years since I've really been trying to do more plein air painting. But in that short amount of time, suddenly I start to feel some freedom, an ability to invite some of my personal expression into my plein air practice. Because in doing anything regularly, some of those decisions, the huge volume of decisions you need to make when something is new, some of those start to become more automatic. I know which colors I want to use for a sky. I know which brush I choose for rendering different objects. I have maybe a strategy for developing backgrounds and foregrounds. And suddenly I start to be able to have a little more fun with my subject and simplify different areas that maybe felt overly detailed before. And there's something very freeing about that. Additionally, what plein air painting does for an artist in an art and travel workshop is it helps you to remember to prioritize the artist. Because having that limited amount of time means you're not going to create a masterwork of whatever you're painting. This isn't the time to put a huge amount of time and intention into design and slowly build up those layers or whatever it is that you like to do to really create those masterful paintings. Rather, you're pushed to work quickly and decisively, and that brings an immediacy and a connection to the environment that I think is something that later, when you go into your sketchbook and you look at those paintings, it's like, oh man, I felt so many feelings as I was painting this. And those feelings, they remind me that I was there and what I was experiencing meant something to me. And I think as artists, we tend to not value our painting time unless it produces great paintings. And painting on location, painting plein air, forces us to value the experience actually more than the outcome of the painting. And I think that's powerful. I think that says something to you subconsciously about your contribution to your art and how to value the fact that you are the artist making your art and you, the artist, are valuable. You are the glue. You're the power that makes those paintings come to life. As I think about plein air, and I'm pushing on this a little bit because I think most of us understand the value of a studio workshop. So I'm just kind of digging into why a plein air workshop would be valuable, even if you don't consider yourself a plein air painter. I don't know that I consider myself a plein air painter. It's not my strongest skill, but it's brought some really rich things to my painting practice that I would not have necessarily developed otherwise. And one of the things that it does, and I really love this, is that when we are holding our, I don't have my phone nearby, when we're holding our phones, taking a photograph, we are actually putting up a barrier between ourselves and our experience. That physical act of looking through your camera lens, it makes you the kind of the third party. And interestingly, I think when you are holding a sketchbook and a paintbrush, just pick the most random paintbrush in the stack, what's happening is instead of having something in between you and whatever you're experiencing, you get to be the conduit. Here's what you're seeing, and you're taking it in, and it's coming through your paintbrush into your sketchbook. So you are the camera, you are the vehicle, and there's something very connected about that, a connectedness, a relationship, something that I think is really powerful in this day and age of very quickly wanting to put up barriers and to have that bit of separation. Looking for anything that brings that connectedness to me is really, really powerful. As an art instructor, I seek connectedness in my interactions with my students, in my painting practice, and in just my ability, my relationship with time. All of those things are really rely on my connectedness to have any kind of life to them. And so I think it's powerful. I think it's very powerful for an art practice to invite this kind of diversity, to create circumstances where you are pushed out of your comfort zone. There's some discomfort with travel, new places and new time zones and new emotions and new people, and maybe that feeling of exposure in painting in a group, which a lot of artists, we don't do commonly. And so you might be comparing yourself to other artists as well. But in all of that, it speaks into our art practice in ways that we are maybe less likely to recognize or value. And, I'm just here to call attention to that and just to say how much I recognize the courage, the resilience, and the commitment of the artists that I have worked with in these different workshops. I'm always just a little bit humbled by their willingness to trust me and show up and just open themselves up to this process and this practice. Whether we're painting in studio together or on location in some of these beautiful places, it seems like when an artist says yes to that kind of, I always wanted to do this, I'm not sure I'm ready, I'm going to go for it anyhow. When artists say yes to that, it pulls you up a little straighter in your mindset about your art practice. It reinforces your commitment to what you're creating and what you want from your art. It's a little thumbs up vote to yourself that you believe in what you're doing and that it's valuable for you. And all of those things elevate you. They elevate your work. And I have huge respect for that. We're starting before we're ready. Leaning into that willingness to change and willingness to grow. And I think there's something really beautiful and powerful about that. I just want to talk about my trip outline. If you have been thinking about painting with me and aren't sure about the right workshop for you, I'm just going to quickly go over them. I have one more workshop taking registration in 2024, and that's in Bar Harbor, Maine with Madeline Island School of the Arts, September 30th to October 4th. This is a studio and plein air workshop. We're starting off the year in Costa Rica with Art Safari. I taught with Art Safari last year in 2023 in Cornwall, England, and this time we're going for 2 weeks to Costa Rica. This is a plein air sketching workshop. We're going to be in 4 different locations in Costa Rica. We're going to be just savoring the vibrant palette of the tropics. And lots of beach time. I'm gonna just bring up the trip outline here so you could take a look at it. And it's, having 2 weeks to paint together means we really get to settle into this process and pace ourselves through it. I think I've talked about, plein air sometimes having kind of an urgency or an immediacy to it. But when you have 2 weeks, you get to kind of lean into it a little bit and just settle in. Really excited about this beautiful workshop. I've been to Costa Rica. It's an amazing, beautiful country. We always felt very safe there. And the diversity of the vegetation, the landscape, and the wildlife is unlike anywhere else, in my opinion. I'm going to have to learn how to paint a monkey and toucans, and it's going to be amazing. Consider joining us for that. Then following that, I'm actually returning directly from Costa Rica to teach in Tucson with Madeline Island School of the Arts. This is a studio / plein air workshop. We will be painting on location outdoors a bit, but we also have lots of hours of studio time. We're in a single location for a 5-day workshop. And this is my first time teaching a workshop dedicated to experimental watercolor. So that means I'm going to be bringing a box full of fun things for you to try adding to your watercolor practice. Things like watercolor sticks, different mark making tools, stencils, different kinds of, pouring, sprays, mark making, all the different things that kind of break your watercolor practice out of its rut. If you think there's only 4 or 5 techniques for watercolor and you've figured them all out, or maybe you haven't figured them all out, but you're kind of bored with them anyhow, this is the workshop for you. It's dedicated to play. We're not going to be thinking so much about outcome, but really just about opening up this toolbox, having the opportunity to see where a painting goes when we get a little bit jiggy with it, and just channel that inner child and play a bit. Then I get a couple months off of travel and we'll be headed to Europe in April for a 12 days in Greece at the end of April. It's the same itinerary or almost the same, barring minor changes, as my most recent Greece trip. So if the photos you're seeing, we're going to be seeing some of those places again. I can't wait. Some of the experiences we had in Greece as we were eating some of those amazing meals and seeing some of those beautiful places, I kept saying, I get to do this again next year. And that made it a little bit easier to leave, to tell you the truth. Greece is, it's a different country than anywhere I've ever been before. Culturally, there's different things that stretched us, but there was also these beautiful moments where we felt like we were in a land that had forgotten about time. We spent, I think, 5 days on Amorgos, which is a lovely island that time has forgotten. It's just the most peaceful way to start a watercolor painting trip. And, later we spent a little time in some more tourist infested areas, but our guides were able to help us not feel like we were just one more cow in the herd. And really we got to explore these beautiful islands with in a lovely kind of down to earth and paced, measured way. It's so connected. I use that word a lot. Following Greece, I'm going to be heading over to Italy for 5 days of painting on Lake Como. And I have taught on Lake Como before with the Blue Walk, and this again is an art and travel workshop. So we'll be painting on location around Lake Como and the little villages, and it's absolutely a lovely scenic spot. It's got rooftop terraces to watch the sunset. The people are really friendly, and there's just little vignettes of beautiful things to paint everywhere we turn. I love Lake Como, and I'm really looking forward to painting there again. I have a number of students who are signing up for both Greece and Italy, so we'll be really getting to know each other, having those 2 trips back to back. Following that, get another little breather, and I'll be teaching again with Steve Putrick and Madeline Island School of the Arts in October of 2025. I don't have a sign-up registration page for that workshop yet, but all of the others are open for enrollment right now. I'm going to put a link in the description below the video. You can visit angelafair.com if you can't find it, and take a look at my in-person workshops page. I am so excited to be able to teach and travel in this way. Living in northern British Columbia, it's a long way to go for anyone wanting to paint with me. Most of these locations are 3 or 4 flights for me to get to, so it's actually really stretching for me even to travel. And I'm not planning to do any travel workshops in 2026 at this point. I'm feeling like I'm going to need a bit of a breather, and so I'm scheduling in kind of that mental health, no travel zone for 2026. So these are the workshops that I have lined up for the next year. And so if you're interested in painting with me, if that's something you've always wanted to do and you don't want to wait until 2027, do take a look at my workshop planner. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the different workshops. One thing I want to mention and articulate really clearly is that each of these workshops I'm partnering with a company who is taking care of all of the logistics and the details. They have terms and conditions that they have set for these workshops regarding refunds and any changes to your travel plans. And so you want to make sure when you sign up, read through those carefully, make sure you know what you're committing to before you sign up. I know it's easy to feel like, oh man, these are going to fill up really fast and I got to sign up and not read all the fine prints. But I want you to make sure you know what to expect in terms of the itinerary, and also in terms of, if something comes up and you need to change your plans, what are your options there? We always stress purchase travel insurance if you're leaving the country, and purchase that travel insurance as soon as you commit to the trip, so that and if anything comes up and you've paid a deposit, you get your deposit back through insurance or whatever, because they're not always refundable. And those are just little things for planning these trips that are important to keep in mind. I love working with these companies and the people who operate them. They're small businesses, usually just run by a few people. And so I've gotten to know the teams that are behind these companies, and it's been such a privilege to work with companies that love travel. They love creating an experience that is a really grounded travel, and they love seeing artists celebrate these different places and learn together. And so I love that we get to do that. I commented recently that I have the yearning I have to travel is, it almost feels the same as the yearning I have to paint. Both of them feel very visceral, and it's been such a privilege to be able to pair those two together. It feels like when I'm traveling with other artists, we just all have this kind of openness and presence to, we want to take it all in, you know, we want to drink it in, we want to be fully present, we want to be mindful of, you know, just how our time is limited. Let's make the most of it. And I love seeing that happen as we build this kind of relational experience with each other, with our art, and with our landscape. Thank you for being a part of that with me. If you've had the chance to travel and paint, you know what I'm talking about. There's really, it's all the emotions at the same time, and there's nothing like it, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.